Hey, what's going on, guys? So we'll be taking a look at this Etekcity Scroll X1 high performance gaming mouse. This is the box that it comes in. It's a pretty small box and nothing too over the top, just a little picture of the mouse with the name and brand of this mouse. This is what the actual mouse itself looks like. You can see that it is red and red, so this little scroll wheel AP is red and then the back is red. And inside the box we actually have four little replacement pads. These go on the bottom of the mouse. I'll show you in a second. We have a little driver's installation disc, which will of course let you install the drivers for this mouse, so you can go ahead and mess around with the mouse settings a little bit and all of that with this here. And then we have a little user's manual, so all of that is pretty cool. These little things here, actually, they go on the bottom of the mouse here, so you can see we have these little pads here. It's not like you need to put them on here right away. They're actually just replacement pads, so when these wear off from using them as a mouse and stuff, these reduce the friction, so it actually allows the mouse to slide and whatnot. So that's pretty good to be able to replace those, because they get dust and stuff under there and they just kind of wear out over time, and so you can replace those, which is included, which is really nice. So right off the bat, on the bottom of the mouse you can actually see a cool little design that I haven't really seen on many other mice, and it actually just shows the scroll wheel all the way through, so it's kind of like a Batmobile sort of design. You just need, if you know what I'm talking about, with that little wheels sort of thing. So it's like, this is just, I don't know, it looks kind of cool from the bottom. I don't know why you'd be looking from the bottom, but you can see the design of the mouse from the bottom. It does look pretty cool. They have the little scroll wheel that you can totally see, rather than it being covered or something like mini mice, which does look pretty cool. And then the top of the mouse, of course, I already showed you, just looks like that, which also looks pretty cool. So if you count the 2 TPI buttons on the top, this is a 7-button gaming mouse. We have our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 7, which is the scroll wheel. You can actually click it and it will register as a click, so you can program it to do whatever you want. I believe currently it's go to the desktop or something. I don't actually know what it is currently, but it is pretty cool that you can customize all this in the drivers and stuff, which we'll get into later, of course. When you go to pick up this mouse, whether it be getting it out of the box initially or whatnot, the first thing you notice is the weight of it. If you actually read the product description on Amazon or on Etekcity's website, it does mention the weight, and it says it's like most gamers prefer it to be a heavier mouse and whatnot, so they went ahead and increased the weight. You can't adjust the weight or anything. You can see how it's the bottom. I already showed you can't adjust the weight or anything, but the initial weight of it just makes it seem really high quality. I believe I've said this is like a $13 mouse, and for $13 it is really high quality feeling, just because of the weight of it. Like, if you go ahead and pick it up, it just, I don't know, it just makes it seem like it's high quality, I guess. Most of the time, if something's heavier and actually has a decent weight to it, just makes it feel high quality. Like really cheap mice are really light and just all super cheap plastic, but that is not the impression with this mouse. You can just initially feel it, and it feels like it's high quality, and it feels like it's built to last, which is a really good first impression to get with the initial weight of the mouse. As for the materials and whatnot, there isn't any metal or anything in this mouse. It's all plastic, but the actual plastic is pretty decent plastic. Like the sides of the scroll wheel and everything are all pretty high quality plastic, and this is a sort of soft plastic, so it definitely feels very nice, and it's not a bad feeling or anything like that. Like, I have a few mice, this just the same kind of plastic all across the board, but this varies in different plastics, so it actually uses plastics where it would be practical to use them. For example, there's a different plastic up here than it is on here, I believe, and same with the buttons and whatnot, so definitely feels very nice. And then on the sides of the mice here, we actually have some rubber, and we have rubber on the scroll wheel as well, which is pretty standard, but it's definitely nice that they continued that trend. As for the size of the mouse, this is a pretty narrow mouse. I don't really have anything to compare it to, but some mice are pretty wide. This is definitely on the narrower side, and if I go ahead and put my hand on here, it will change because I have auto white balance on, so I apologize for that. That is why it's constantly changing. But anyway, so you can see that the side of the mouse has this little rubber pad here. I'll go ahead and zoom in so you can actually see this. So the side of the mouse has this little rubber pad here. This is just for gripping. Your thumb kind of sits here, which feels very good. And then on the other side here, we actually have a little spot for our pinky. So you can see actually it just kind of curves up, and there's a spot for our pinky as well. So that's just all ergonomic. So that's 100% for feel. So if you go ahead and put your hand on the mouse like this, then you can just see your pinky kind of rests right down here, and then your your ring finger rather rests here, and then your middle finger, of course, just goes where you normally would on a mouse. Same with your pointer finger, goes where normally would on a mouse, and then there's a resting spot for your thumb, which is Definitely all things that are very, very nice to see on a mouse, because if you are using it for a long period of time, you definitely want it to be comfortable, and I definitely get an impression that this mouse is pretty comfortable. As for the actual cable of this mouse, we have a 5-foot braided cable. There are some even really high-end things like this DAS keyboard that I have right here that you can see the little wheels of the DAS keyboard. It actually doesn't even have a braided cable, it has a rubber cable, so that is the DAS keyboard, not this mouse. So even something, this is a $175 keyboard, yet it still doesn't have a rubber cable, but this mouse includes a braided cable, so it's very, very nice to see there's a braided cable, just because braided cables are significantly better than rubber cables most of the time, and they just, I don't know, they just feel better and they last longer and they look better. It's just everything about them is so much better, so it's very nice to see a braided cable included on here. I'll go ahead and unplug the mouse to show you the connector here. So this is a gold-plated USB. You can see the little Etekcity logo sort of here. There's that little logo right here, and then just a pretty excessively large USB, I would say, but it does look kind of cool, I guess. I mean, I don't know, I would prefer it to be smaller, but it is pretty long, so if you have a tight space for your USB slots or something, you might want to consider that, just because the USB is actually pretty long. We'll go ahead and plug this back in, and you can see that right away the LEDs turn on. There aren't any drivers or anything that you need to install, so you can take this mouse out of the box, plug it into your computer, and then it will be working right away on Mac and PC. Straight out of the box, these two buttons are DPI buttons. We have our right click, our left click. I'm not sure what the scroll wheel click button does, but then we have our page forward and page backward buttons, which are pretty standard on any mouse. Like, actually a lot of mice have these little buttons here, but you can of course customize them in the driver software, which we will get into. Driver software is where I'm most disappointed with this mouse, because I'll explain later, but so if you go ahead and change the DPI, so this mouse ranges from 800 to 2400 DPI. You can, I believe, change it from anywhere in between there in the driver software, which we'll get into. But so this is the highest DPI, which is 2400. You can go to second down and it's red, and then this DPI is 1600, and one more down is green and it's 800. My least favorite thing about this mouse is the fact that you cannot customize any of the LED colors whatsoever. In the email from Etekcity, they actually told me to mention that you can customize the LED colors, but you can change them, and you do that by changing the DPI. You cannot change the DPI or the LEDs separately, just because, yeah, I'll show you the software. There isn't any section to adjust the color or the mode of the LED or anything. Like, you can see just constantly breathing. I mean, I personally like the breathing one, but if you wanted to have it solid or off, you can't do anything like that. So you can customize some of the buttons somewhat, but you can't actually customize the LED, which I think is pretty irritating, especially considering this one is always red. So if you want to have a really low DPI and you want to have that, then you're stuck with green, and you have to have this red scroll wheel still. So I would recommend keeping it on this one, but if you don't like this DPI, then I guess you could just change your computer settings. But it's kind of annoying that the LED changes with the DPI and it cannot change separately. So we'll go ahead and get into the software here, which is, like I said, probably my least favorite thing about this mouse. So far, just the weight of it and everything makes it seem really, really good, and I'm like, oh sweet, then I'll just go ahead and change the LED colors and all will be well. But once I got in the software, I was pretty disappointed, which I'll go ahead and show you why. I've already installed the software, but I'm going to install it again just to kind of show you the installation process here. So you can see this is what you get when you put in the disk. There isn't any auto setup or anything like that. I mean, there's this thing called setup, so we'll go ahead and double click on that, and then it will ask us to agree to it. It's all unknown. That's like the sketchiest thing about it. It's everything about it is unknown, so it's actually installing it on a different thing here. So it says, for a file deletion, do you really want to remove the selected application, all of its components? Which is probably just because I've already installed it, so I'll just go ahead and press OK, and it says it's finished, and you can click on this maybe. No. Alright, so we just have to wait a little bit, and it's, I don't know, there's just really isn't very good software. The software is all generic, so once you've installed it, unless you put it somewhere you're going to remember it, it's impossible to find. I tried doing this earlier, which is actually the reason I uninstalled it, is just because it's really, really difficult to find. Like, it's just all generic. It's named like mouse driver, nothing about Etekcity or anything like that. It doesn't even say it's made by Etekcity, so when you get the notification on your computer, it actually just says that it's unknown, and it's super irritating because I've had some software like that in the past, and I'm like, well, why would you do that when you could brand it and whatnot? Like, they put the branding in the software, but just the names of the software, it's a little file name, but it makes it impossible to find because it's all generic. It's super irritating. But Anyway, so it says standard mouse driver setup, and we press finish, and then it should theoretically be all set up, maybe. So I guess it just finished. I don't know what that's all about, so let's try it again. This is what I'm talking about when it says setup.exe, and then it just says publisher unknown, so it's super generic and really irritating that it's like that. And then you of course agree to it, and then it says welcome to the install shield wizard for standard mouse driver. Go ahead and press yes, and then it says where I would like to install it, and it's just called standard mouse driver. And so it's super irritating, but I'm gonna actually change where that's installed really quickly. I forgot I'm actually just going to install it here, because when you try to install it, that is another problem I had, is I changed the installation directory and it doesn't install anything in a folder. So when you install everything, it installs everything as little files, so I just put it in generic program files x86, which is what you would normally do, and it's like, alright, and it installs it as a folder, but instead it just installed everything there without a folder. So just the software inside of this is really illogical and really not very good. So just the installation process and then finding it afterwards is just kind of a pain in the butt. But anyway, we'll go ahead and press next here, and then it says that it is doing this and saving everything, and then we'll go ahead and launch the mouse driver now. Be warned that unless you make a shortcut to this or something, this is probably the last time you will be able to open this after you close, unless you want to totally reinstall everything, because it is roughly impossible to find afterwards. So we'll go ahead and press yes and open it, and then we are greeted with the driver software, which honestly is super pleasant and super great. And I was like, oh cool, this looks really nice. And I was like, it just seems super logical and everything's all good about that. So you can change the polling rate and all of that. You can change the mouse wheel scroll speed, so you can do that, and then one page and it scrolls a full page, which is really cool. And you can actually change the DPI and whatnot, but I believe if you just like unclick this, like it just changes it, but it doesn't actually do anything about it. Like you can't make a custom DPI or anything, so it goes from 800 to 2400, and that is all that it is. And like I said, when it's on a certain DPI, it is a certain LED color, and you can't change any of that because each DPI setting has a color associated with it, and so you can't actually really customize the color of the mouse. You can't have a preferable mouse LED color unless you want to sacrifice your DPI, because with no LEDs this mouse would look really nice, but and once you add the LEDs it's a really cool function. But the fact that you can't change them separately from the DPI is just super irritating, because you'll either get really lucky and you'll have your favorite color on the right DPI profile, but if you're not and you want a high DPI with a green LED color or something like that, you can't actually do that unless you go ahead and screw around in your PC settings, which is just kind of a pain in the butt when they just shouldn't have made them linked anyway. I mean, I guess it kind of makes sense, you can tell which DPI you're on, but at least let us change the LED colors in the gaming mouse drivers. Like, I don't understand that. It's this software that they could easily press a button that's like, alright, link this DPI with this LED color, but they didn't do anything like that, because you can just go ahead and look. I mean, maybe I'm totally missing it, but I'm pretty sure there's main control and advanced settings, and nothing here is anything about LED colors. You can change the double click speed, the mouse wheel scroll speed, you can change the polling rate, and this little DPI switcher, you can like uncheck things so it can only be one color, and so if you press apply, it's like, oh cool, now you can't change the LED colors, which is super useful. Now that it's only on 800, you are stuck with the green DPI. So I guess you can just do that and then make it to be green and a low DPI, but each LED color is directly linked with this number here. So if you, like I said, it's just super irritating, and I have no idea why they did that. It's a super nice mouse until you go ahead and mess around with this. But if you want to be content with the LED colors that are associated with the DPI settings and you're all good with that, and you don't use the driver software, this is a great mouse. But if you go ahead and try to mess around with the software, it's kind of more pain than it's worth. One thing that is nice though is that you can actually go ahead and change the function of each button on here. So you can go ahead and left click, right click, scroll click, Internet Explorer backward, Internet Explorer forward, DPI plus and DPI minus. You can actually customize the function of each one. So we'll go ahead and zoom in for you here. You can see all of our options here. So there's left click, right click, scroll click, Internet Explorer, all these different things. So pretty much anything that you'll find on a keyboard, and that can actually be true because you can press single key and then you can just go ahead and actually input the thing you would want. So I press this button here and it's like H, and you're okay. Now number 7, we'll just put in an H, which is super nice, and you can actually do full-on macro though, which is actually really useful. I mean, the LED things just kind of kill it, but if you want to use the macro manager, you can go ahead and do that, and then you can actually enter all these commands and tons of different things and loop them, and you can record delays between the commands. So if you would like one thing to happen and the next thing to happen, you can do that, or if you wanted to press all those buttons at once, you can do that. So with a single button push, you can perform a ton of different commands because it has little macro profiles on here, which is pretty nice. However, that's also pretty standard. So I would say that initially this mouse is great. It is really fun to use, and it feels great, and it's super easy to set up and whatnot if you don't use the software whatsoever. So if you use this mouse, as a lot of people will, and that is just plug and play, then it is a great mouse and definitely well worth the $14. However, if you read that it has macro controllers and it has all these LED things, you can customize everything about it, then you might want to hold off if you're considering buying it for that. I mean, it is a great value for, considering it's $14 and just how high quality and the materials it's made out of, it feels really good. But the fact that you can't change certain things in the macro settings just kind of irritate me. However, they do have macro profiles and a lot of cool things that are just extra, I guess. So I mean, maybe I'm spoiled by other mice allowing me to change LED colors, but with this one, I don't know, the fact that you can't change it just kind of annoys me, and as I've said most of this video. However, if you are just planning to get it as a plug-and-play mouse, this is definitely a great plug-and-play mouse because it feels really great. It is only $14, and you can actually go ahead and change LED colors and stuff like that through just the DPI settings. However, it will of course change the DPI, which is super irritating, but you can actually correct that in your Windows PC settings or your Mac settings, so it's not that big of a deal, but the fact that it's just linked just bothers me, as you know. So it is definitely a great value for a plug-and-play mouse. However, if you are really relying on the software and whatnot, then I don't know, it's just clunky and unpolished, and it's just kind of not super fun to use. This has been Jordan for Joe Reviews, and this has been my review of the Etekcity Scroll X1. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in my next review.